no, I'm very much into improvisation, so it'll be natural. So don't worry.
Oh yeah. I mean, like that's the number one skill. Let's start this off. Let's start the podcast this way. I think that's the number one skill as a CEO, to be able to shoot from the hip, like to rely on your intuition. Would you describe yourself as an intuitive person?
Yes and no. So first of all, I think I agree with what you say, right? It's you need to be able to think on your feet and not take decisions without having the full picture.
Yeah.
You probably have heard of this paralysis by analysis syndrome that people in corporate sometimes have when they try to gather so much data that eventually they never get to make a decision. I think in a startup we don't have this type of luxury, right?
That's the thing, like I don't think it ever happened to me, this paralysis by analysis stuff. What would that tell about me? And also, like, don't hesitate to kind of introduce yourself to the audience whenever you have a bit of a
sure. Well, we are facilitated by the fact that we may not have all the data anyway. So, even if you wanted more, you don't necessarily can gather it without too much of a cost. Quickly about me, I'm Italian as my name.
Luigi.
Absolutely. And but I live in France since 21 years. I've been before coming to France, I used to race cars. So completely different professional race driver.
Talk about that.
Yeah, it lasted long, but then eventually wasn't going anywhere. So I moved to France, where I continued with my second passion, that is IT. I've been 20 years now in the industry, working with companies like Dell, Quest Software, SonicWall, and a number of others. And then about 4 years ago, I decided that it was time to semi-retire. So I went back to my first passion of cars. But that exercised my feet and my hand a lot, but not much my brain. So I got back into business and created a couple of companies. And now the latest and greatest is cybersecurity, predictive cybersecurity company with Bfore.AI, first in the world, trying to limit the impact of cyber threats that obviously big issue at the moment in the market. So
Got it. Well, you have a super interesting background. So I have two random questions for you before we get like in other kind of topics. And like I said, I like shooting from the hips and kind of improvising here. I think too much preparation kind of breaks the good energy and the flow. I kind of bring it back to some common questions I have, which I don't work with a lot of French people, neither with Italians, but from my experience, and there's probably a reason for that, and you can comment on that, but Italians are a bit emotional most of the time, and so are French people. So I do not I don't have much French people in my company, neither as clients. What would you say about this clients? And obviously, like, just to add something here, there's always exceptions, but is there a general truth in that statement?
I think that there is, I would say, a skew toward more passion, or exhibiting the passion. I think everybody's passionate about what they do. But Italian, Latin cultures, I would say in general, not necessarily Italian or French, but also Spanish and others, we do have, I think, a tendency to express that passion more. I actually think it's a powerful skill, because sometimes, especially when you are in a startup and you need to rally people around your product or get interest, to be able to transmit that energy that comes with passion is actually a superpower, right? It gets people interested, curious to see why are you so energetic about what you're doing, and I think it's contagious as well, right? So, but you need to be able to control it, and there are circumstances in which we can be overbearing. But I would say the general assessment you make is not wrong, and definitely it can create sometimes. I worked a lot in Anglo-Saxon companies, and it's not always well understood, this side of the character, right? But I think it's changing as well, right? I would say 15 years ago, exhibiting passion in business or telling what's happening to your life would have been kind of prescribed. Nowadays, I would say that there is more search for authenticity, and also people want to express themselves more because work is becoming such a big part of life as well. So let's say I don't think I've ever had a problem with it. Aside some comments that you may get, but
that's super powerful. Like, if you couple passion with like rationality, I think you get like explosive growth, personally and company wise, because I wouldn't qualify myself as kind of a passionate person from my mother's side, which is like French, whatever, if you talk about dentistry or DNA or whatever, but from my father's side, it's more rational. And I have kind of both inside me, which is an incredible motor, because in the end, if you don't have that passion to grow and to be in hyper growth, I have a theory about winner takes all. So if you're just a normal company, then things won't get really fun. You cannot like just sustain a company and try to really do the basics. Right? Exactly.
The entrepreneurial marathon is such an energy sucking activity that if you don't have an inner engine that creates this energy continuously, and passion is indeed that continuous creation of energy, then you'll not last. Right?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, it's a marathon. Like, it's a marathon over the long term, but every day is a sprint. I'm not sure if you work like that, but me, for example, my 8 to 5, I sprint the hell out of myself, and I'm explosive, a bit like a lion. He sleeps and when he hunts, he hunts, and he hunts to kill. He doesn't hunt for fun, although he might have fun doing it. But yeah, that's a good analogy. What do you think about the sprint and marathon analogy?
To me, you need to have an understanding that it's a long-term adventure to the success.
Yeah.
But there is definitely a huge intensity every day that you decide to dedicate to it. Now there is an advantage as well. You don't need to necessarily do it every single day, right? That's I think the beauty of creating your own business and creating your own culture in that business, is that you can decide that maybe you will work 3 days in a week, or you will work only the morning or at night, and so on and so forth. So I think it's important as an entrepreneur that you know yourself and what makes you give your best and adapt to it.
Yes.
And then going back to the passion, I think it's something I want to share, and I've learned in the past. I think the key is that you have passion for the problem of your customers. Not you shouldn't be passionate about your product. That supposedly it's kind of natural, but I think what makes people really succeed. I've done 3 companies so far, of which one has done very, very bad, one so-so, and one is doing great. And this one is doing great because I have huge passion for the customer problem, and I want to fix that problem. The one that failed, I was doing it because I saw a huge market opportunity, fantastic, way of doing things, great product we built, but I had no passion whatsoever for the problem. So, I couldn't just push myself in the long term to work. And the second one, it's doing so more because of contextual thing. It's more in events, and the market actually wasn't there, even if we were actually providing all the value for the customers. But so long story short, have passion, primarily have passion for your customer problems. That's and pain. Yeah.
That's so good. While you were telling me this, I was asking myself, do I have a passion for example, providing meetings to my clients? Yes, I do have a passion for that, because that's what I do at Top Leads, and I've seen it change the company, and sales is the engine of a company, and obviously I want to see my clients successful. Obviously, I am more passionate about some other problems, for example, health related, right? Because health is probably the most important thing we have. And talking about failed startups, I have my lot of that. I had my supplement company, which was health related. How did you face failure? How did it affect you? How did it shape you? And what did you learn from it?
So that's interesting. So how did failure? So did I experience failure? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I made so many mistakes. That's that if you don't make mistakes, you're not trying hard enough.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So how that shaped myself? I think that there was one case in which I did a big change in an organization where, for contextual reason, I had too much power for my seniority, and so I made a big change. And without telling anybody that I was making that change, and basically that brought the whole business to halt for a week.
Yes.
So, but the good news is that business I had built myself over the last few months. So there wasn't anything in place 6 months earlier, and now it was like a $10 million business, and we put it all to halt for this change. But we arrested the change, and the thing restarted immediately. But the big learning there was understand the interlocks and the interrelationship with other people in the organization, because you definitely will not know everything that you need to know about what this change will entail. And so the big failure there ended up being one of the most profound learning that I've ever had.
Well,
and I was lucky to have a good manager at the time that said, this was an expensive training session, but it's compensated by the value we're bringing to the business, so it's okay. Having an illuminated mentor there was a good one.
But that's interesting, because, and I can certainly place myself in those situations. Usually when I take decisions and I'm firm about it, connecting the data point we were talking initially, I have so much data in my brain that like around 95% of decisions I make are like the right ones. Not to brag, but this is kind of a superpower of mine, but I can definitely put myself in your shoes, especially if I would make an important decision. In your case, it was probably with infrastructure or something like that caused a bug or something, or some kind of other decision, and it messes up. And if it halts the company for 2 weeks, that's really awkward. And you need to over communicate with your team and tell them you're sorry and that what you learned from it, definitely. But this can definitely break people's spirit, especially entrepreneurial people that have commander type of personalities, that want to take their own risk and move themselves in the business. So that can definitely be risky. And like talking again about failure, what did you learn other than this, and how did this shape you? Did this make you like a more resilient individual? Because in my case, if we talk about my supplement company, which is not like fully failed yet, but like it's headed there just for the sole reason that I don't put time anymore inside it. I learned a bunch of things. I was with a co-founder in that business. He went to HEC Montréal, by the way. So you went to HEC Paris. And so really smart guy. I learned how to deal with like other personality and kind of share the leadership here. I also learned that physical product businesses are incredibly hard via software businesses or service-based businesses. and a bunch of other things, So did you have other lessons that you wanted to share, or should I just go with the other questions I have here?
No, I think often a lot of people nowadays think that when they get out of school, it's the best opportunity to create a company. I'm a bit I have a different view of that. I think the best thing you can do when you get out of school is ideally actually, maybe you don't complete your schooling and you get into some businesses, especially if you can get into a large company, there is an advantage there that you get to learn a lot. Making mistakes is actually not that expensive because, you'll be in a controlled environment anyway. And you get to see, what good look like from a certain perspective, right?
That's a really interesting point.
Later on, you can, I'm thinking if I were to start a company 20 years ago when I came to France, people would have hated me in my team because I had zero, management skills. I would have, created.
Management is so hard.
Yes, I think, I was very lucky to be, to join Dell, and Dell is also a very progressive company. Yes. And, I learned a lot, the best school that anybody can afford. And it kind of formatted me in certain skills and competencies and also even the entrepreneurial skill. I think it's part of that culture too. So, so that's, that I think making mistakes should be kind of the I would say the byproduct of the learning process that one has to go through every day. And I think people should look at mistakes as just, part of the game. The critical thing is not to repeat the same mistake twice, right? So as long as you do mistake only once and you learn something and you move on, I think you'll never have any problem in any company, both yours or if you're part of another or a partner, even with customers, it's absolutely okay as long as you, communicate and make sure that you remediate, of course. But if you get into the habit of repeating the same mistake twice, then it's a no-go. It's definitely not the way.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Like, it's Einstein's definition of as crazy, kind of. Luigi, let me guess your age here and try to test my intuition skills. 40 years old, am I accurate?
Slightly more, 44, but not that far. Yes.
All right.
I'm still 21.
Okay.
Inside, I honestly, I still feel exactly the same when I arrived to France.
I'm 65 sometimes, and I'm 15 others. Like it depends on what type of conversations we have. But yeah, I'm still the child, but I do have some wisdom. So okay, 40. That means around 1980, I would say. Yeah. So you started driving carts at like 9-year-old, right?
8 years old, yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so that's like, look, this is something that is unique to you. For example, my childhood, yes, I did play hockey as all Canadians do. I played soccer and all that. I think that kind of shaped you at first, like those killer instincts, in competition. So I think you have that. Like,
yeah, let me share you something that I learned about me when I was racing, and I actually think applies very much to entrepreneurs' life as well, right? Yeah. So when you race cars, there are, and this is my theory, of course. Two kind of drivers that are the drivers that are really into the competition. Okay. I mean, they're doing it because they like the race, they like the going on top of others, being the first of the pack, and so on and so forth. And so their energy is all about the fight.
Got it.
In the race.
Like Hamilton, right?
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm not following Formula One very much, but in Formula One, you have the best of the best. So I wouldn't use
that's Hamilton, Alpha Male.
Example, they definitely tend to have all of the skills that you could think of. Yeah. But the other category would be the ones that go against the chronometer, right? Against the time, right? And it's
that's
really
the best, actually.
It's a fight against themselves.
Yes,
against
exactly.
Others, right?
Obviously, there's obstacles, but it's against yourself.
Exactly. You're trying to always improve and learn, to drive better or improve your car and so on and so forth, right? So how that translates in entrepreneurial world is the people that really need to be in a competitive environment and feel that they're winning deals or crushing the competitor and so on and so forth. Even if that market is crap, right? They will want to be in that market because there is competition. And then you have another class of people that will try to seek for markets that are hard to crack, that, they push their boundaries in terms of figuring out a solution, and that market may be a new market, right, and an innovation market, and so there may not be any competition. If there is, it's probably something not particularly good either, right? But they're fighting against the problem of the customer, basically. So that's while in race will be the chronometer. And so I think it's interesting as an entrepreneur to think which one of these two are you, right? Are you always looking at the market as in your competitors, trying to understand what they do, managing your strategy against theirs, or are you more into fully your customer and fixing their problem, and who cares? For example, take Jeff Bezos.
Jeff he doesn't give a shit about competition.
Absolutely.
Like I'm 95% like with self-improvement against myself, or even 99, and probably 1 to 5% checking the competition on my side.
Yeah. I mean, competition is always a good, I'd say, mirror to understand, other perspectives. Yeah. But I'm biased, so I would say this anyway. But I think it shouldn't be a meter of your success, right?
Yeah. Because it's really toxic when you start to compare yourself with others, like especially with my type of personality, because I would say that you're probably like 60% introverted and 40% extroverted. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah, even 75% introverted. Yeah.
Okay. On my side, it's like it's around 60 extroverted and 40 introverted. Believe it or not, I like spending time by myself. And that creates energy in my will. But yes, that's an incredibly a valuable point. But when I compare myself, like maybe I lack emotional maturity on that level, and I don't often do it. But when I catch myself doing it, maybe like once a month for like 5 minutes, it gets toxic. You know, it's like, oh, this guy's doing better than me. He has it better than me. But you know what? The reality is no one is a god out there. And if you're good at something, that means you sacrifice something else, right? So I think like running the race against yourself is most of the time the best thing to do. And to be honest, the first time I hear that from a driver, I thought it was like all testosterone, like kill or be killed type of guys on the racetrack.
Again, it's my take, having known a number of people in that context. But I think as I said, it's definitely a perspective that is worth keeping in mind, because we're all different, and sometimes trying to think about, you know, it's more important to know about yourself than it is about knowing about the others, right? If you know about yourself, then you know what your gaps are, and
exactly.
how to, you know, cover them with other people in your team, or you know where your strengths are, and that's where you really want to be playing the game and moving the game to, so that, you know, others cannot fight against you, right?
I think like personality tests and knowing yourselves throughout your life, okay, because obviously if you have one personality test, it changes, like, and that's another of my philosophies. Anyone can change, and you will be, well, in my case, I will be different obviously this year than from next year. My personality test will go like progressively in one way more than the other, because I want to double down on my strengths. But I don't believe also in being weak in many parts, you know, like for example, I can be a visionary, but I don't want to be a Steve Jobs asshole. And I love Steve Jobs, by the way. But, you know, I don't want to have those weaknesses. But that being said, I think that like personality tests should kind of be more pushed towards people, whether by government, again, that's another topic, or just in any shape or way or form. Because
I mean,
back to
personality tests are an interesting one. Again, because I was in a large corporate that invested a lot in people, I've been lucky to go through basically any form or shape of personality test, maybe professional one, MBTI, DISC, you name it, right? And my takeaway is three things. So number one, yes, they are important, and they are important to know yourself. But it's number two, even more important to understand that most of those tests are only able to show your natural behavior, not your corrected behavior. Corrected behavior is when you are in a context and you know other people, or you are, you know, under a certain level of stress. Then you're, you know, because we are animals, we'll you know, social animals, we will adapt, right, and change our behavior. So so there are tests that measure corrected behaviors, but the critical thing to know is that results of a test from a natural behavior is showing up your strengths and weaknesses when not non-corrected. And when that is generally when you are under extreme stress, like in an emergency, in a crisis. That's where all your weaknesses and your strengths will come up. And so to know them is actually quite powerful, because you know crisis happen. And the only, you know, they say if you're not planning for the crisis, then you're planning for the failure during that crisis, right? So one way to plan for a crisis is to know which one will be your weaknesses and strengths during that crisis, so that you can cover for them beforehand, right?
That's so important.
And so I agree with you. These tests are quite useful from that perspective. Number three is, you know, remember that you know, every one of us is different, and you know, having a certain result to one of those tests isn't good or bad. There isn't any good or bad personalities, right? There are only good or bad people in terms of adapting themselves to conditions, right? So you know, work on your flexibility, your adaptability, your hunch on when to change. I think that's very important.
No, that's so good. You touch on so many points here, and we're almost like coming down to the last minute of our scheduled podcast here. But I mean, you pretty much said everything here. I would take many tests, like frequently, maybe like once a month, just to see like different points of data and add it to my brain algorithm. And yes, that serves for me to know my weak points and my strengths. And I think like one of the number one skill, like you said, it's adaptability. Because like, what's the point of making a personality test other than to flatter your ego if it's not to change? And obviously that's a skill that you work. For example, we talked when we started this call about travel, right? I'm a digital nomad, so I pretty much change places on a monthly basis or 2 months. And I like exploring new places, you know, getting out of my comfort zone, getting out of my habits, just to change and develop some new skill set. And that I think is one of my top 5 skills. Obviously, like to be great in life, you need to gather a bunch of these skills. And yes, like you said, crises happen, especially during COVID. It gets pretty hectic and crazy. And I love the quote, you know, that how you show up in those crises is actually like the definition of who you are as a human being. Are you that screaming asshole when shit gets tough, or are you this calm person that reassures everyone, everything will be fine, guys, here is the plan. I need you to execute that plan and focus. So if you're that confident leader, that alpha dog, I just adopted a dog yesterday, and as I'm speaking to, I'm kind of watching him play with other dogs, you know. And if are you this alpha dog, or are you this scared, anxious chihuahua that will kind of bite everyone and bark at everyone when there's a crisis, you know?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you need that too, right? It's important not to have all the alpha dogs in the room, otherwise they're going to kill each other before they fix the problem, right? But I think it's important again when you know, big crisis like this happens to. And I think this is not a problem for entrepreneurs as much as for dev teams, right? Entrepreneurs, when crisis happens, switch into opportunity research mode, right? Is what are we going to get out of these? And it's more about, you know, how can we help the rest of the team, you know, kind of bridge from, you know, where they were before to the new one. So there's a nice book I read a while ago called Who Moved My Cheese? that
Oh,
is
yeah.
a very nice
I read this
story
one.
about change, and I recommend everybody to read about it. The key message there is when something change, don't waste any time trying to go back to how it was. Understand that you're never going to rewind time. So focus on the new environment. Try to understand it as fast as you can, and you'll be again in a good spot later on, right?
Yeah.
And so COVID is a good example. In yes, it's been a disaster, and still is a disaster for many families with
Yes.
people losses and all the health problems that it caused. But it's also looking like it's going to bring a good wind of change in terms of people rewiring their priorities, right? In terms of, do we really want to have these long commute type lives in which people were both 2 hours in a car going to office and then another 2 hours going back maybe by train or whatever, or should we not do more the remote work? You are at the extreme side of the paradox, of course, with the nomad life.
Yeah.
But even for people that are going to be more stable, but thanks to technology working at distance, or in our case with Bfore.AI, it's fully remote company. We don't have any physical office. We have people in Argentina, here in France, in the UK, and even here in France, we are spread all over the place. And there is no limitation in doing that. There is, of course, understanding that there are things that are different, that are also having an office had some positive characteristics that we need to try and continue to have. But I spoke recently with some of my team members and asked, they've been here in the company for 3 months, and asked, okay, what's the best thing that's happening to you in these 3 months? And they say, realizing that this way of fully remote work is really, there's no going back basically for them. Say now that they've tested it, they wouldn't want to have another company that bring them to the office. I think it's a change that we're only now starting to see. I've been remote for 20 years, but I think at scale, it's visible only now. It'd be very, very interesting to see in 10 years, 15 years, how the society evolves. We'll see certainly smaller villages and towns, kind of.
Yeah, that's a huge shift. I think there's a huge opportunity for someone that would provide, picks to miners when it comes to actually working at home, not necessarily someone that will build offices at home, but anything that is related to working at home. This has been my lifestyle for 4 years, but someone that would give out picks to miners, just as in the gold rush. It's not really that.
Yeah, but I don't think working at home will be the only part of it. You will have all sorts of other scenarios, like maybe small co-working spaces.
But do you believe in that? Do you believe in co-working? On my side, as a young Gen Y or X nomad, I've never really believed in co-working for many reasons.
Let me tell you this, right? So for example, I have 2 team members that are expatriates here in France. So they have no family and they have no friends. They have some friends because they went to school here, but they don't have a social life fully deployed yet, right? And so one of the limitations of the fully remote company that we have is they say, when you are in an office, you may get closer to some of your colleagues, and maybe you go playing squash together in the evening, or having a beer, or having a weekend together, going to the beach or whatever, right? This in a fully remote company will not happen, right? Because everybody's in a completely different place. So they get lost. But if you have a common space of working, like a co-working space where there are people from different company, then that thing may happen, right? Even if they're not in the same company. So what I'm saying is, in the past, we saw a minority of people working remotely and a majority of people working in the office, and it was very, very hard not to work in the office. We should not have the same mistake done again, as in forcing everybody working from home and then having a minority that still go to the office when maybe there are some more that want to go to the office, or in some between. So what I'm saying is, just give to people the various capabilities and the various options, and allow them to make a kind of a choice that related to what works best for them. I think the objective of any manager and CEO, because we are ultimately the one that set up this type of policies, is to really look at how my people will give their best. What can I do to help them give their best? And if that means buying a Regus subscription so that they can go in any office, any city that they are, then so be it, right? If it is about giving them a fully blown workstation at home with a movable desk, fantastic Herman Miller Iron chairs, 4 screens and whatever, well, that be it, right? Allocate the budget that is necessary according to the company's capabilities. But I think the focus shouldn't be about setting a policy to try and fix, but rather, how do I empower any individual to give their best for the company? And I think that's really what should drive. At least we have it in our value system in our company, but I hope others will see that as the way forward, because the reality is one site will never fit all, right? So trying to have a single policy for an entire company just not going to work.
Yeah, I love your mental models here on how to always think about the end user, whether it is an employee or client. So I strongly agree with that. In the end, we need to be like fathers and their children, and just care about them, deeply care about them, and they will thrive, they will flourish in the environment that we set up for them. So hey, we are at the end of this podcast.
I'm not sure. I like just to share my, definitely if anyone hearing this podcast want to continue the conversation, I'd love to have them, join me on LinkedIn. I'm very present on LinkedIn or Twitter. So in both cases, Luigi LENGUITO. I don't know if you would put it in. You can put my handles in the commentary of the podcast.
Sure.
But otherwise, you'll find my name and surname on the company. It's easier. Bfore.AI.
Yeah.
And looking forward to learn to meet other entrepreneurs and share ideas and learn from others as well.
Sure. Well, thank you for that, Luigi. So just to make sure, it's Bfore.AI. So like just before without the E. Bfore.AI. Yeah, .ai. All right. Well, thank you, Luigi. It's been nice talking to you, and we'll stay in touch.